Howdy, everyone. So today I'll be talking about Tommy John surgery in younger athletes, more in depth of high school and college baseball players. So I'm going to be going in a little bit of depth before I get into my main situations or problems that are causing this. So the MLB was first founded in 1876 in Ohio when it was just the National League. It wasn't the AL and National League as we see in the MLB today. And it was mainly just one league that started it, but it was before all the other professional sports that we see in the U.S. today. But more importantly, Tommy John didn't start till 1974, which is 98 years later, almost 100 years after the sport initially began. And it took so long for this surgery to develop. And it was actually named after a player, Tommy John, who first got this procedure done on him. But throughout this paper, I'll be talking about how players fall in love with the sport. I'll be talking about Tommy John, the surgery in general, how it's expanded into the younger players, how the younger generations think that this makes them better if they get the surgery, and how the solution to this might just be coaches and pitch count. So Tommy John is a surgery that happens on your UCL. It's when you tear it fully, tear it barely, or shred the whole thing. It happens to any of those ways, but it's mainly when you have this like sensation in your elbow, like tingling sensation that's running throughout your whole arm and like down to your fingers. And doctors will most time will like ask if you can feel it, and you won't be able to feel like the sensation in your fingers if you have it torn. So most of the time, if it's a slight tear, they will like just repair the tendon. But if it's like a full tear, most of the time they'll get another tendon from like the back of your knee, or they'll get one in your wrist to replace the tendon in general. So like it's a whole new tendon being put into your arm to replace something that like is your main tendon to be throwing if you're a baseball player. And most of the time, this recovery can even take up to 2 years, as we've seen from Justin Verlander. It took him way over a year, almost two, to come back into the league. So athletes grow up playing sports, many different sports. Like I grew up playing baseball, soccer. Like I tried basically every sport you can think of, but I started playing baseball when I was 4, and it was the main one that stuck for me. What I'm trying to mean by this is I played baseball for 14 years, and every athlete like finds their own way, their own path to where they fall in love with the sport. But none of them think about how something as small as a baseball can ruin their life. So it's such a small object, but it's something that could ruin their careers and something that could stop their career before it even happens. On the other hand, this is happening more and more. It doesn't matter if it's college level or high school, but mainly on both of the levels. So in high school, there's many different athletes that get this procedure, but they don't think that like it's going to take them that long since they're younger or such like that. So they don't really care. But over time, we've seen that more and more players are getting drafted, even if they've had Tommy John. So in 2007, 4% of players that were drafted in the MLB had the procedure before they were drafted, but it jumped up to over double to 9% in 2005, which is a huge jump because that's only 8 years, and especially since the procedure had only came out 48 years ago, and it's traveling so fast between professional and players that like in high school haven't even reached college yet. Like they're just starting their careers. Like it's, as we see players that are going 20 years in the MLB these days, that's nothing. They're only 18 years old and they're being drafted with Tommy John. While a lot of players think that this is the solution to their problem, people that are like throwing mid 90s think that if you get the procedure that they're going to be throwing even higher 90s. But an example of this is Justin Verlander. This is complete opposite, by the way. Justin Verlander throws 99 before he gets Tommy John in the 8th inning. Like he's pitching whole games. He's pitching the whole game, still throwing 99 at a consistent level. He gets hurt, gets Tommy John, and give in mind he did get a Cy Young Award before his Tommy John surgery that he just had in the last 2 years, but he did come back and get it this year. But this year he was throwing 95 to mid 90s, so he's losing 5 miles of velo, and he's mainly relying on his off speed, which is curveballs, changeups, sliders, things of those natures that are like the reasons that you can get Tommy John. So when younger athletes think this, they think that getting the surgery is how they're going to be the next Justin Verlander. That's not true, because he's a whole different pitcher. He's pitched at a professional level for many years now, and he's been doing it at a very consistent level. And like, he's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. You're not comparing yourself to Justin Verlander because he changed his whole mechanic. He changed a lot of different things for him to be a Cy Young winner again this year. But most of the time we see that like he changes off speed. That was the main thing. But what I'm trying to say here is that just because you have Tommy John surgery doesn't mean you can come back throwing harder or pitching better or more consistently. He put in the work and things like that because he's already been through the situation before, and that's not the thing that's going to escalate someone's career to make him even a better player. In the end, I think Tommy John procedure is horrible for all baseball players to have to go through. It takes over a year, so much time, and so many things you have to go through before you can even get back on a field again to even pitch. So I have a method to it. So when you're in Little League, your pitches were always counted to ensure that these younger athletes had their rest days and made sure their arms are okay to prevent things like this from happening in the future. So you throw 80 pitches, you rest 5 days. If you throw over 80 pitches, you rest 6 days. But you're still playing the field. You can still do things. You just can't pitch on a mound. And the coaches are the ones keeping these counters and like making sure that their athletes are staying safe during this time. But as you grow older, you go to travel ball where you play every weekend, the whole year. There is no breaks, maybe 3 weeks breaks. That's it. And you could play in high school, you could play in travel ball, you could do both at the same time. But coaches do not realize that they're having so much responsibility for their athletes while not looking out for them at the same time. So I think that coaches need to have more responsibility for their players and make sure that they take care of them at a higher level while keeping in mind of their pitch count before they bring them in and pitch them twice in a weekend if they've already started a game, or pitch them a second time in the weekend in general, especially if they're going to play the field the rest of the weekend. And with all that being said, I think that younger athletes getting surgeries for Tommy John at such a young age is a huge thing. And if something isn't done, like coaches being more responsible for it or pitches counts being more aware in these players, that it's going to continue to keep growing throughout draft class, throughout MLB, throughout younger players. And I think this is like the main solution to stop this before the overuse in players is neglected. Thank you for listening and watching.